Taman Park was not supposed to be a hero. He was 23 years old, thin, and wore glasses that always slid down his nose when he worked. His job was simple: fix things. When machines broke on Orbital Defense Station Theta 9, he fixed them. When pipes leaked, he sealed them. When lights flickered, he replaced them. Nobody noticed him much, and that was fine. He liked it quiet. The station floated above New Busan, a colony world where 2 million humans lived and worked. Theta 9 watched over them like a guardian, bristling with weapons and shields. Taemin knew every corridor, every vent, every circuit panel. He had walked these halls for 2 years, carrying his tools and humming old songs his grandmother taught him. The day everything changed started normally. Taemin was replacing a coolant filter in Section D when the alarm screamed to life. Red lights flooded the corridor. His radio crackled with panicked voices. "Vrin ships detected. Multiple contacts. All hands to battle stations." Taemin's hands shook. The Vrin. Everyone feared them. They were tall, gray-skinned aliens with 4 arms and cold black eyes. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems. They took what they wanted, and they wanted human worlds. He ran toward the evacuation bay. His boots pounded against metal floors. Other crew members rushed past him, pushing and shoving. Someone knocked his glasses askew. He fixed them without stopping. The station shuddered. Explosions boomed somewhere above. Dust rained from the ceiling. Taemin's heart hammered in his chest. He rounded a corner and saw the evacuation shuttles through a window. Small ships were detaching, engines burning bright as they fled toward the planet below. He sprinted faster. His lungs burned. The bay doors were ahead. He could see people crowding into the last shuttle. So close. Then the corridor behind him exploded. The blast threw him forward. His shoulder hit the wall hard. Pain shot through his arm. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. He crawled forward, coughing, reaching for the bay doors. Through the smoke, he saw the last shuttle's doors close. He pounded on the bay window, shouting, but his voice was lost in the noise. The shuttle's engines flared. It pulled away from the station, growing smaller and smaller until it vanished. Taemin slumped against the wall. He was alone. The station's emergency lights came on, casting everything in dim blue. His radio was dead, crushed in the explosion. His left arm throbbed, probably bruised but not broken. He sat there for a long moment, trying to understand. Everyone was gone. The station was lost. He should have been on that shuttle. More explosions rocked Theta 9. The Vrin were coming. He stood up slowly. His tool belt was still around his waist. The weight was familiar, comforting. He touched each tool by habit. Wrench, screwdriver, wire cutters, welding torch. Things he knew how to use. What was he supposed to do now? Surrender? The Vrin did not treat prisoners well. Everyone knew the stories. Die fighting? He was not a soldier. He could barely use a gun. The station had weapons, but Taemin would not know how to fire them properly. He walked through the empty corridors, thinking. The station groaned around him, wounded, but still alive. He found himself in the main maintenance hub, a room he knew better than his own quarters. Screens showed the station's systems, most of them flashing red warnings. Hull breaches, power failures, life support at 60%. Through the external cameras, he watched Vrin boarding ships attached to the station like insects. They would be inside within minutes. Taemin sat at the console. His hands moved across the controls automatically. He had fixed so many problems here. Rerouted power. Sealed. Breaches. Kept the station running when others said it was impossible. An idea formed in his mind. A stupid, desperate idea. He could not fight the Vrin with guns. But maybe he did not need to. He pulled up the station's schematics. The Vrin would go to the command center first. That was standard procedure. They would want to take control of the station's weapons and systems. But to get there, They would need to pass through dozens of corridors, use elevators, open doors, all things Taemin controlled. His fingers flew over the keyboard. He locked down the main route to the command center. Sealed blast doors. Cut power to certain sections. Rerouted the elevators to different paths. The station's computer asked for confirmation. He gave it. On the cameras, he watched Vryn soldiers enter through the breached airlocks. They were massive, nearly 7 feet tall. Wearing armor that looked like it could stop anything. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. 12 of them in the first group. They moved confidently through the corridors, following their planned route. Then, they reached the first sealed door. It would not open. One Vryn examined the control panel. Another spoke into a communication device, probably asking for instructions. Taemin watched them try to override the door. They were good, but he was better. He had built half of these security systems. He knew their weaknesses and their strengths. While they worked on the door, he vented the atmosphere from the corridor behind them. Not enough to kill, just enough to trigger safety alerts. The Vryn turned, confused. They split up. 6 went back to check the problem. 6 stayed at the door, divide and confuse. That was all Taemin could do. He spent the next hour playing this game. Locking doors, opening others, turning off lights in some sections, turning them on in others. The Vryn spread through the station, trying to reach the command center, but Taemin made every step difficult. He was shaking, terrified, but his hands stayed steady on the controls. On the cameras, he saw a Vryn officer, taller than the others, with red markings on its armor. It was shouting at its soldiers, pointing at different corridors. They looked frustrated, angry. Good. Taemin pulled up the environmental controls. He increased the temperature in Section C to uncomfortable levels, decreased it in Section F until frost formed on the walls. He triggered false radiation warnings in the cargo bay, released harmless steam into the medical wing. The Vryn did not know the station. They did not know what was real and what was fake. Hours passed. Taemin did not move from the console. He drank water from his canteen and ate an emergency ration bar from his pocket. His eyes burned from staring at screens, but he could not stop. The Vryn were advancing, slowly, toward the command center. He could delay them, but not stop them. Eventually, they would figure out his tricks. Eventually, they would find him. But for now, for this moment, Taemin Park was not running, not hiding, not giving up. He was fighting the only way he knew how. And the enemy, in all their arrogance and strength, had not even realized he existed. 3 weeks. Taemin survived for 3 weeks on Theta 9 before he found a way to escape. 3 weeks of hiding in ventilation shafts and maintenance crawl spaces. 3 weeks of stealing Vryn, ration packs, and drinking recycled water. 3 weeks of making the station itself fight back. He learned the Vryn routines. They changed guard shifts every 8 hours. They checked the armory twice per day. They ran diagnostics on their equipment every morning. They were organized, efficient, and predictable. Taemin used that against them. He rewired sensor arrays to show false readings. He contaminated their water supply with harmless but foul-tasting chemicals. He programmed the automated doors to randomly lock, trapping Vryn soldiers in storage rooms for hours. The Vryn officer with the red markings, whose name Taemin learned was Zelthar, thought the station was malfunctioning. He saw the reports. Technical failures, system glitches, environmental anomalies. He never suspected a single human was causing everything. Why would he? Humans were social creatures. They needed others. They broke down in isolation. That was what Vryn intelligence said. On day 21, Taemin found his chance. A small Vryn shuttle sat in the repair bay, damaged from battle but fixable. The guards rotated away for their meal shift. He had 40 minutes. His hands shook as he worked, replacing a burnt power coupling. bypassing the damaged navigation system, hot wiring the ignition. These were things he knew. Things he could fix. The engines coughed to life. Alarms blared. Vryn soldiers rushed toward the bay. Taemin sealed the bay doors and blasted them with a fire suppression system, buying seconds. He threw himself into the pilot seat and pushed the throttle forward. The shuttle shot out into space, spinning wildly. Taemin had never piloted anything before. He pulled levers, pushed buttons, trying to remember training videos he had half-watched. The shuttle tumbled through the void, barely under control. But it was moving away from Theta 9. Behind him, the station grew smaller. He had survived. Somehow, impossibly, he had survived. 6 months later, Captain Hana Yoon sat in her office at Military Intelligence Headquarters, staring at reports that made no sense. She was 34, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for seeing patterns others missed. Her job was analyzing enemy operations, finding weaknesses in Vryn tactics. But these reports were different. 12 separate incidents, all in Vryn-occupied territory, all classified as unexplained technical failures. At Supply Depot Gamma, food shipments spoiled mysteriously. Security footage showed nothing. At Forward Base Kepler, ammunition magazines detonated randomly over 2 weeks. At Communication Relay 7, transmissions jammed at critical moments. Individually, they meant nothing. Equipment failed sometimes, but together, across different locations, all starting after the Vryn occupied those positions, Hana called up more data. She cross-referenced the incidents with personnel records. Who had been at those locations when the Vryn attacked? One name appeared at Depot Gamma. Dong Hyun Choi, supply manager. Status: missing, presumed captured, or dead. One name at Base Kepler. Ji Woo Kim, scout pilot. Status: missing, presumed dead. One name at Relay 7. Haewon Lee, medical technician. Status: missing, presumed dead. Hana leaned back in her chair. Missing, not confirmed dead, just missing. She pulled up another file. Theta 9. The Vryn had occupied it for 3 weeks before abandoning it suddenly, claiming equipment malfunctions made it unusable. One maintenance technician had been left behind during evacuation. Taemin Park. Status: recovered, currently in medical care. Hana stood up and grabbed her jacket. She found Taemin in the residential wing of Luna Base, the human military headquarters. He lived in a small apartment now, doing maintenance work like before. When he answered the door, he looked tired. His glasses were still crooked. Private Park? Hana said. I'm Captain Hana Yoon. I need to ask you about Theta 9. Taemin invited her inside. His apartment was neat, organized. Tools hung on the wall in perfect rows. What did you do on the station? Hana asked. After everyone left? Taemin shrugged. I fixed things. Made things not work. Whatever I could. For 3 weeks, I didn't have anywhere else to go. Hana showed him the reports. The incidents at other locations. Do you think others might have done the same thing? People who got left behind? Taemin studied the data. He nodded slowly. Maybe. If they knew the systems. If they had tools. He looked up at Hana. Why does it matter? Because the Vryn don't expect it, Hana said. They think we need support structures, command chains, supply lines. They think isolated humans give up. I almost did, Taemin admitted. Every day. But you didn't. No. Hana felt excitement building. An idea forming. A terrible, dangerous, possibly brilliant idea. She went to Admiral Kyung-Soo Nam with her theory. He was 62, gray-haired, and skeptical of everything. He listened to her presentation in silence. You think these missing people are sabotaging Vryn operations? He asked. Yes, sir. And you want to find them? No, sir. I want to make more of them. The Admiral's expression darkened. Explain. Hana pulled up tactical maps. The Vryn are winning because they concentrate force and overwhelm us. But their supply lines are stretched thin. Their occupied territories are huge. They can't guard everything. So we put people in those territories, small teams, 2 or 3 soldiers. We don't give them missions to accomplish. We just let them do what Private Park did. Adapt. Survive. 'Cause problems. You want to abandon our people behind enemy lines. I want to give them a choice, sir. Volunteers only. The Admiral stood up and walked to the window overlooking Luna's gray surface. The Vryn will kill them. Maybe. Or maybe the Vryn will underestimate them like they underestimated Private Park. It's a suicide mission. It's a chance, sir. Right now, we don't have many of those. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned back. If I approve this, you're responsible. Every life lost is on you. Hana met his gaze. I understand. And you'll need someone to train them. Someone who knows how to survive alone. I already have someone in mind. 2 days later, Hana returned to Taemin's apartment. I need your help, she said. I'm a maintenance worker, Taemin replied. You're a survivor. I need you to teach others how to do what you did. Taemin looked at his tools on the wall. At his quiet, safe apartment. At the life he had built after escaping hell. How many people? He asked. 50 teams. 100 soldiers total. That's a lot of people to send to die. Yes, Hana agreed. She did not sugarcoat it. But they'll volunteer. And you'll give them the best chance possible. Taemin took off his glasses and cleaned them on his shirt. Put them back on. They slid down his nose immediately. When do we start? He asked. In the occupied territories, Donghyun Choi spoiled another shipment of Vryn food. Jiwoo Kim sabotaged another ammunition depot. Haewon Lee cut communication lines with wire cutters stolen from a maintenance closet. They did not know about each other. They did not know about Hana's plan. They just knew how to survive one more day. And the Vryn, in all their intelligence and superiority, still believed these were random technical failures. Their first error was letting humans step onto the battlefield. Their second error was not noticing when those humans refused to leave. The training facility was hidden in an asteroid belt near Neptune. 50 teams arrived over 3 weeks, all volunteers. Some were soldiers, some were engineers, some were just ordinary people who wanted to fight back. They came from everywhere. Colony worlds, space stations, Earth itself. Taemin stood before them on the first day. He still looked like a maintenance worker, not a soldier. His glasses still slid down his nose. Some of the volunteers whispered to each other, wondering why this thin, quiet man was their instructor. I am not going to teach you how to shoot, Taemin said. Other people will do that. I am going to teach you how to survive when everyone thinks you are already dead. He showed them the basics. How to hide in small spaces for hours. How to move silently through corridors. How to live on almost no food or water. How to stay awake when exhaustion made your body scream for sleep. Then, he taught them the important parts. How to read enemy routines. How to identify which systems were critical and which were redundant. How to cause maximum disruption with minimum risk. You are not trying to win battles, Taemin explained. You are trying to make them lose. There is a difference. One volunteer, a young woman named Eun-ji Kwon, raised her hand. What if we get caught? Taemin looked at her steadily. Then you die. Or worse. That is why you can quit now. No one will think less of you. Nobody Kit. For 6 weeks, they trained. They practiced in mock-up stations that mimicked Vryn facilities. They learned Vryn technology, Vryn routines, Vryn weaknesses. Hana brought in intelligence reports, updating them constantly. The volunteers formed into pairs, learning to work together with few words. Trust was everything. Your partner might be the only other human you saw for months. At night, Taemin walked through the facility, checking on them. He found Eun-ji sitting alone, staring at her hands. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. What if I fail? What if I get my partner killed? Taemin sat down beside her. On Theta 9, I was terrified every single day. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my tools. But I kept working. That is all you can do. Keep working. How did you not give up? I thought about my grandmother. She lived through the resource wars on Earth. She told me stories about surviving when everyone said it was impossible. She always said, humans are stubborn. We do not quit, even when we should. Yunji smiled slightly. My grandfather said the same thing. Lo's my. Lo's my. Lo's my. Lo's my. Lo's my. Lo's my. Meanwhile, in Vryn High Command, aboard the flagship Dominion's Will, military leaders planned their final offensive. General Vokrin stood before a holographic map showing human territory. The humans were retreating, slowly but steadily. Their main fleet was concentrated around Earth and the core worlds. 37 colony worlds had fallen. The war was nearly over. We will strike at Terra Nova, Vokrin announced. It is their last major shipyard. Without it, they cannot build new ships. We will commit 60% of our fleet, his advisors agreed. The plan was solid. Overwhelming force. The humans would have to defend Terra Nova with everything they had. When they lost, the war would end. One advisor, an intelligence officer named Felmas, hesitated. General, there have been increasing reports of equipment failures in our occupied territories. Equipment fails, Vokrin said dismissively. Our engineers will address it. Yes, but the frequency is unusual. 17 major incidents in the past month alone. Are you suggesting the humans are sabotaging our facilities? It is possible. Vokrin made a sound like a laugh. With what forces? We monitor their military movements constantly. There are no human troops in our territories. Perhaps small teams. Humans require support structures. Vokrin interrupted. Isolated humans do not function effectively. This is established fact. Our psychologists have confirmed it in dozens of studies. The failures are coincidental, or the result of substandard equipment, nothing more. Felmas did not argue further. Arguing with General Vokrin was unwise. Back at the training facility, the 50 teams prepared for deployment. Hana briefed them personally on their insertion points. Each team would be dropped in different sectors of Vryn-controlled space, light years apart. You will have no communication with command, Hana explained. No support, no extraction. You will be completely on your own. The volunteers listened silently. Your objective is simple. Survive and cause problems. We are not asking you to destroy bases or kill generals. We are asking you to be annoying. Break things. Make them doubt their equipment. Make them waste resources chasing ghosts. She paused, making eye contact with each person. If you do your job right, the Vryn will never know you exist. They will think their own systems are failing. That is the goal, Taemin added. The Vryn think in patterns. They expect organized resistance, coordinated attacks, military operations. They do not expect chaos. Give them chaos. The deployments began 1 week later. Each team boarded small stealth ships that would insert them into Vryn territory through unmapped wormholes. The ships could only make one-way trips. There would be no going back until the war ended. Yunji and her partner, a quiet man named Sung-Ho Bei, were assigned to a sector near the Vryn fuel processing facilities. As their ship jumped into the unknown, Unji squeezed Sung-Ho's hand. See you on the other side, she whispered. If there is another side, Sung-Ho replied. But he squeezed back. Across Vryn space, 50 teams inserted. Most made it to their targets. Some were detected and killed immediately. Some disappeared without a trace. But 37 teams made it through and began their work. Within 2 weeks, strange reports began flooding into Vryn command centers. At Fuel Station 12, processing equipment kept shutting down. Engineers found nothing wrong. At Garrison Post 7, food supplies were contaminated with non-toxic but revolting additives. No one could explain how. At Communication Hub 9, transmissions were redirected randomly, creating confusion across an entire sector. The Vryn investigated. They found no evidence of intruders. No human signatures on their sensors. No traces of sabotage that could not be explained by equipment failure. They increased security anyway. Posted more guards. Ran more diagnostics. Implemented new protocols. It did not help. Yoonji and Sung-ho lived in the ventilation system of the fuel processing station. They learned the Vryn routines within days. Morning shift change at 0600. Equipment inspection at 1,400. Guard rotation at 2,200. They struck during shift changes, when attention was divided. A loosened valve here. A reprogrammed computer there. Small things. Invisible things. The Vryn never saw them. Across the occupied zones, the other teams did the same. They did not communicate with each other. Did not coordinate. Did not even know where the others were. But they all learned the same lessons Taemin had taught them. Be patient. Be invisible. Be persistent. And slowly, the Vryn infrastructure began to crack. Admiral Nam watched the intelligence reports with Hana in the war room on Luna Base. The data was fragmentary, but clear. Vryn logistics efficiency had dropped by 12%. Response times to incidents had increased. Supply shipments were delayed. It is working, Hana said quietly. At what cost? Nam asked. We have lost contact with 13 teams. They knew the risks. That does not make it easier. No, sir. It does not. Nam studied the strategic map. The Vryn are massing for their attack on Terra Nova. If your scattered teams can disrupt their logistics during the battle. That is the plan, sir. It is a dangerous plan. Everything depends on people we cannot contact, cannot support, cannot even confirm are alive. Hana nodded. Yes, sir. But they are out there. And they are fighting. In their own way. In the darkness of Vryn space, 37 teams survived. They ate stolen food and drank recycled water. They slept in maintenance shafts and storage closets. They watched and waited and struck when the moment was right. The Vryn never noticed them. Never suspected. It was their third error. And it would cost them everything. The Battle of Terra Nova began at 0400 hours on a Tuesday morning. The Vryn fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 300 warships. Each one bristling with weapons. General Vokrin commanded from Dominion's will, confident in his overwhelming force. The human fleet waited for them. 200 ships. Everything humanity could spare. Admiral Nam commanded from the battleship Incheon. He knew the odds. He knew this might be humanity's last stand. But he also knew something Vokrin did not. Across Vryn-occupied space, the scattered teams had been watching. Waiting. They did not know when the battle would start, but they knew it was coming. Vryn logistics had been moving supplies toward the front lines for weeks. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, everything an invasion fleet needed. The teams had been patient. They had not struck major targets, had not revealed themselves. They had saved their best work for this moment. When the battle began, they moved. At Fuel Depot 6, Eunji and Sung-ho had spent 3 months learning every detail of the facility. They knew which tanks fed which ships. They knew the pumping schedules. They knew which safety systems could be bypassed. During the night shift, while Vryn workers slept, they made their move. Sung-ho disabled the monitoring sensors. Eunji climbed into the fuel control room through an air vent. Her hands moved quickly across the controls, entering commands she had practiced 100 times in her mind. She did not sabotage the fuel. That would be detected immediately. Instead, she contaminated it. Just enough impurities to cause problems, but not enough to trigger quality alerts. The fuel would work initially, then cause engine malfunctions hours later. By the time anyone noticed, millions of gallons of contaminated fuel had been shipped to the front lines. At Communication Relay Station 4, another team jammed transmission frequencies. Not constantly, just at random intervals. enough to create confusion. Orders arrived incomplete. Reports got lost. Commanders could not coordinate properly. At Ammunition Depot 7, a team reprogrammed the inventory system. It showed full stocks when supplies were already depleted. Ships heading to the battle thought they could resupply at the depot, but found empty warehouses. Across 20 different locations, 20 different teams struck simultaneously. They had no way to coordinate, no communication with each other. But they all knew the patterns. They all understood the moment. And they all struck at the same time. In the Terra Nova system, the battle raged. Human ships fought desperately, using every tactic they knew. Admiral Nam rotated his forces, keeping fresh ships in the fight while damaged ones retreated. The Vryn pressed forward relentlessly. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. Victory seemed inevitable. Then the problems began. At 0800 hours, Vryn cruiser formations began reporting engine failures. Random ships dropped out of formation, their reactors stuttering. Engineers scrambled to diagnose the problem, while human ships exploited the gaps in the Vryn lines. At 0900 hours, Vryn communication channels descended into chaos. Orders contradicted each other. Status reports never arrived. Fleet coordination broke down. At 1000 hours, supply ships arrived from the rear to find their cargo manifests were wrong. Ammunition that was supposed to be there was not. Replacement parts were for the wrong ship models. Chaos multiplied. General Vokrin stood on his command deck, watching his perfect plan fall apart. "What is happening?" he demanded. His officers scrambled to explain. Engine failures due to contaminated fuel. Communication problems from unknown interference. Supply chain disruptions from inventory errors. "This is not possible," Vokrin said. "Our systems are checked constantly. Our logistics are precise. But the problems continued. Ships ran out of ammunition. Reactors overheated. Formations scattered. As communication failed, the human fleet, sensing the confusion, pressed their advantage. They struck at isolated Vryn ships. They targeted the supply vessels. They turned the Vryn strength into weakness. Admiral Nam watched his tactical display with grim satisfaction. The enemy fleet was still larger, still dangerous, but it was confused, disorganized, fighting itself as much as the humans. "All ships, focus fire on their command vessel," Nam ordered. "End this now." The human fleet concentrated its attack on Dominion's will. Vokrin's flagship shuddered under the bombardment. Shields flickered. Hull plating melted. Vokrin finally understood. This was not random failure. This was sabotage. Coordinated sabotage across his entire supply network. But how? Where were the saboteurs? His sensors showed no human forces in the rear territories. His garrison commanders reported no intruders. There should be no one there. "General, we must retreat," his tactical officer said. Vokrin wanted to refuse, wanted to fight. But his fleet was falling apart around him. Ships without fuel. Ships without ammunition. Ships that could not even talk to each other. "All vessels, withdraw," he ordered, the words bitter in his mouth. The Vryn fleet turned and fled. Human ships pursued them to the edge of the system, then let them go. They had won. Impossibly, they had won. In the occupied territories, the scattered teams heard nothing about the battle. They were too far away, too isolated. But they felt the change. Vryn patrols became more aggressive. Security increased. The enemy was angry, confused, hunting for ghosts. The teams went deeper into hiding. Their work was done. For now. 3 days after the battle, Taemin led a mission to New Jeju, a colony world the Vryn had captured 6 months earlier. 10,000 human civilians were trapped there, working in forced labor camps. Intelligence said the garrison was small, only 300 Vryn soldiers, but the defenses were strong. Hana had tried to stop him. "You are too valuable to risk on a rescue mission. Those people have been waiting for 6 months," Taemin replied. "We can reach them now." while the Vryn are still confused. Take a full assault team. No. Small team. Fast insertion. Same way we have been doing everything else. Taemin took 6 people with him. They dropped onto New Jeju in a stealth shuttle and made their way to the largest labor camp. At night, Taemin and 2 others slipped past the guards and entered the camp. The prisoners were housed in metal barracks, locked from the outside. Taemin found the camp administrator, a man named Jae Sung Han, and woke him quietly. "Who are you?" Jae Sung whispered. "Military. We are getting you out. There are 10,000 of us and 300 guards. You cannot fight them all." "We are not going to fight them," Taemin said. "You are." He explained the plan quickly. Jae Sung's eyes widened. "That is insane." "Yes," Taemin agreed. "But it will work." Over the next 2 hours, word spread through the camp in whispers. Taemin's team distributed weapons they had stolen from a Vryn armory. Not many weapons, not enough for everyone. But enough. At dawn, when the guards opened the barracks for morning work detail, the prisoners attacked. The Vryn were completely unprepared. They expected compliance, not resistance. The garrison commander, Korvan, watched in shock as unarmed laborers became fighters. They used tools as weapons. They threw rocks. They overwhelmed guards through sheer numbers. Korvan finally understood what his superiors had missed. Humans did not need armies to be dangerous. Every human, given the chance, could choose to fight, could choose to resist, could become a threat. It was not about weapons or training. It was about will. And these humans had plenty of that. The battle for the camp lasted 3 hours. Many civilians died. Many more were wounded. But in the end, the Vryn garrison surrendered. Korvan stood in the center of the camp, surrounded by angry humans with scavenged weapons. Taemin approached him. "You did not expect this," he said, in broken Vryn language. Korvan looked at the small human with the crooked glasses. "No, we did not. That was your mistake." Human ships arrived by evening to evacuate the freed prisoners. Taemin stood and watched them board, feeling something he had not felt in months. Hope. Back at Vryn High Command, General Vokrin reviewed reports from the Terra Nova disaster. His analysts had finally pieced together what happened. Small teams of humans, operating independently across Vryn space. Invisible saboteurs, who struck at infrastructure and logistics. Intelligence Officer Felma stood before him. "We never detected them because we were not looking for individuals. We were looking for organized military units." "How many?" Vokrin asked. "Unknown. Possibly dozens of teams. Possibly more. Find them. Kill them. We are trying, General. But they hide well. And our forces are stretched thin trying to maintain control of occupied territories." Vokrin stood and looked at the star map. Human territory glowed blue. Vryn territory glowed red. The red had been advancing for months. Now it had stopped. "How do we fight an enemy we cannot find?" he asked. Filmas had no answer. The war was changing. And the Vryn, for the first time, were afraid. 6 months after the Battle of Terra Nova, the war ended. Not with a final battle or a triumphant victory, but with a ceasefire agreement signed on neutral ground. The Vryn did not surrender. They simply stopped. Their advance halted. Their fleets withdrew to defensive positions. Their diplomats requested peace talks. The reason was simple. They could not win. Not because humanity had superior forces or better technology, but because they could not hold what they conquered. Every occupied world became a nightmare of sabotage and resistance. Every garrison faced invisible enemies. Every supply line was vulnerable. The cost of occupation exceeded the value of conquest. Ambassador Trellman represented the Vryn at the peace conference. She was old for her species, her gray skin marked with ceremonial scars. She sat across from human negotiators in a sterile conference room on a neutral station. "We underestimated you," she said simply. We studied your military capabilities, your industrial capacity, your fleet strength. We calculated we could achieve victory within 2 years. Admiral Nam, representing humanity, nodded. Your calculations were correct, based on conventional warfare, but you did not fight conventionally. You fought as individuals, scattered and independent. We fought however we could. Trellman leaned forward. Our psychologists told us isolated humans become ineffective, that you require social structures and support systems. That alone, you would break down. Your psychologists were wrong. They were spectacularly wrong. Trellman agreed. We saw your cooperation and teamwork as weakness. We thought removing support structures would neutralize you. Instead, each human became an independent threat. We could not predict you, could not model you, could not defend against you. Captain Hana Yoon, sitting beside Nam, spoke up. You made assumptions based on how we prefer to live, not on what we are capable of doing. Those are different things. Yes. We understand that now. Too late. But we understand. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. The terms were simple. The Vrin would withdraw from all occupied human territory. Both sides would establish a demilitarized zone. Trade and communication would remain open, but regulated. No reparations. No war crimes trials. Just separation and peace. Some human leaders wanted to push for more. Wanted to punish the Vrin for their invasion. But Admiral Nam refused. We won by being underestimated, he explained. Let us not make the same mistake by overestimating our strength. We survived. That is enough. The treaty was signed. 3 months later, a memorial ceremony was held on Earth, in a park overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Stone markers stood in neat rows, each one bearing a name. Of the 50 teams deployed in Operation Scattered Star, only 31 individuals survived. 69 had died in Vrin territory, alone and far from home. Some were killed in combat. Some were captured and executed. Some simply disappeared. Their fates unknown. Taemin stood among the survivors, wearing a formal uniform that felt strange and stiff. He had been promoted to captain, though he still thought of himself as a maintenance worker. Beside him stood Yoonji and Sung-ho, both bearing scars from their months in hiding. Captain Hana Yoon stood at the podium to deliver the eulogy. The wind blew her hair as she looked out at the assembled crowd. Veterans, families, civilians, who wanted to honor the fallen. The people we remember today were not super soldiers, Hana began. They were not special forces or elite commandos. They were ordinary people who volunteered for an extraordinary mission. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Vrin made many errors in their invasion of human space. Their first error was underestimating a single maintenance technician left behind on a space station. Their last error was not realizing that every human carries the same potential. Hana looked at Taemin, then at the other survivors. These people lived in ventilation shafts and storage closets. They ate stolen food and drank recycled water. They had no support, no extraction plan, no hope of rescue. And they fought anyway. Not because they were trained soldiers, but because they refused to accept defeat. The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. We mourn 69 heroes today. But we also celebrate them, because they changed the course of history, not through grand battles or brilliant tactics, but through persistence, through stubbornness, through the simple refusal to give up. Hana stepped down from the podium. One by one, families came forward to touch the stone markers bearing their loved ones' names. Taemin watched them, feeling the weight of survival. He was alive because of luck and timing. Others, just as brave, just as capable, were gone. After the ceremony, Taemin visited Theta 9. The space station had been converted into a memorial. The corridors where he had hidden for 3 weeks were preserved exactly as they were. Information plaques explained what had happened there. He walked through the maintenance hub, where he had controlled the station's systems. His old console was still there, behind protective glass. A young tour guide was explaining to a group of visitors how a single person had held the station against Vryn occupation. The guide made it sound heroic, noble. Taemin remembered it differently. He remembered being terrified, hungry, desperate. He remembered shaking so badly he could barely hold his tools. He slipped away before anyone recognized him. In the observation deck, he found Hana looking out at the stars. "Hiding from your admirers?" she asked. "They would be disappointed." "I am not what they think." "You are exactly what they think. You just do not see it." Taemin adjusted his glasses. "I was scared every moment. I almost gave up 100 times. But you did not give up. That is what matters." They stood in silence, watching the stars. "Do you think it will last?" Taemin asked. "The peace? I do not know." The Vryn learned their lesson. But there are other species out there. Other empires. And they will underestimate us too, probably. Humans look weak. We are not the strongest or the fastest. We do not have the best technology. Other species will see that and think we are easy prey. Taemin smiled slightly. "That is their mistake." Yes it is. Far across the galaxy, in Vryn space, intelligence analysts were updating their files on humanity. The old assessments were deleted, replaced with new ones. The new file was marked with the highest threat designation. Inside, detailed analyses explained human capabilities, their adaptability, their independence, their refusal to surrender even in impossible situations. One section was highlighted in red. Critical warning. Do not engage human forces under the assumption they require support structures to function. Individual humans are capable of operating independently for extended periods, while maintaining combat effectiveness. Isolation does not neutralize human threats. It distributes them. Each human must be treated as a potential autonomous combat unit. The section concluded with a simple recommendation. Threat level: critical. Never engage individuals in isolation. Human capacity for independent action remains incalculable. Recommend avoiding conflict with this species whenever possible. The analyst who wrote the report was Felmas, the intelligence officer who had tried to warn General Vokrin. She sent the updated assessment to all Vryn military commands with a personal note. "We thought we understood humans, because we studied their civilization. We learned too late that civilization is what humans build when they cooperate. It is not what they are. What they are, individually, is far more dangerous than we imagined." On Earth, in his small apartment, Taemin returned to his old life. He went back to maintenance work, fixing things that broke. His glasses still slid down his nose. People still did not notice him much. But sometimes, late at night, he would stand on his balcony and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vryn were watching, remembering, learning. They had overlooked him once, had dismissed him as insignificant, had made the error of letting him step into battle. They would never make that mistake again. And any other species that thought humanity was weak, that thought humans could be conquered easily, would learn the same hard lesson. Humans were most dangerous when you stopped paying attention, when you thought they were beaten, when you assumed they would give up, because that was when they became truly unpredictable. That was when they became themselves. And that, more than any weapon or fleet or technology, was what made humanity dangerous. Not their strength in unity, though they had that. Not their technology or tactics, though those were formidable, but the simple fact that every single human, alone and afraid, could choose to keep fighting, could choose to adapt and survive, and cause problems, could choose to be stubborn. The Vryn had learned that lesson in blood and defeat. The rest of the galaxy would learn it too. Eventually, Taemin looked at the stars and smiled. Then he went inside, took off his glasses, and went to sleep. Tomorrow he would fix a broken water heater in Building C. It was a simple job. A normal job. And that was just fine with him. He had been a hero once. That was enough for a lifetime.